your maker, say something that makes sense. These are your last words, so make them worth the wait.
Pretty bright, kind of, SE. So I used a de-esser. You can kind of hear the difference with this on now.
Oh, meet your maker, say something that makes sense. These are your last words, so make them worth the wait.
I'll do quite a bit of de-essing right in the front end. It's kind of what I do all the time. I like to do it that way. And then adding EQ after. And then I'll do some de-essing at the end. And that's something that I do a lot. Depends on the mic and the singer. But I usually like to get the vocals pretty crispy, pretty bright, really compressed sounding. And in order to do that, sometimes the T's and the S's and things will rip your face off. So you just want to kind of dial that back when you can. And I don't like vocals that are too much S or too harsh in spots. You just want to kind of clean it up if you can. I'll do this too, and I'll go in and cut out some stuff before the de-esser. Like, I don't like 2.3 on the vocal right away, so I'll get rid of that, de-ess, and then sort of start my vocal chain. But that's kind of what I like to do, is get rid of whatever I don't like at the beginning, and then start doing what you're going to do after the fact. All of the vocals, for the most part, of the lead vocals are going to vocal buses up here. You can see Voc verse, Voc pre-chorus, and Voc chorus. And this is just an easy way to do it. I like the sound of, if you have a double on a lead, sending both of those to the same compressor. So they're kind of compressing together. They're not separated, and it makes it tighter. And sort of the point of the double to me is just to make the vocal bigger than life and, bitier or whatever you want to call it. But it can be weird if they're not working together, if they're on their own tracks. And so I like to send those to this bus up here. And that's something I do all the time. I'm a big fan of doing vocals this way. So here are the settings on Howard Benson vocals for the verse vocals. It's like the aggro vocals. Different settings on different vocals, but this is what we did. So 3 dB of gain on the top end. This is like a high shelf at 25 and 3.6, 21. And you can see where the Q is at on there, pretty wide. So adding a lot with this. This compressor is pretty aggressive. And so I play with this up and down, but for this, all the way up. You can see I have the limit button in on Howard's plugin as well. And not using any effects on this, because I'm sending it all to those aux sends. And it's just cleaner and easier to do it that way. So mainly just using this for the EQ and the compression. And I'll play you what it sounds like with this on now.
Oh, meet your maker, say something that makes sense. These are your last words, so make them worth the wait.
Quite a bit more in your face with this on. Really like it. I'll play you the double too.
Oh, meet your maker, say something that makes sense. These are your last words, so make them worth the wait.
Something fun to do when you have a double like this. Add some distortion on just the double. Turn it down a little bit, because it's probably going to make it too loud. And get a little bit more color out of it. And I did that before the de-esser. So it wasn't bringing out too much of that on the double. But you can see kind of where this was at, where the mix is, adding crunch, and then the crush setting, just kind of slamming it a little bit.
Oh, meet your maker, say something that makes sense. These are your last words, so make them worth the wait. Meet your maker, it's time to set things straight. These are your last words, so make them count, or it's too late.
Yeah, so it's ripping. One thing too, when you're doing this kind of compression, breaths, you can have some issues with that. Those sorts of things. That, I just cut it out. There's a breath at the beginning. Clip gained it down quite a bit. because it just picks it up so much and it just becomes way too loud. I'm not a fan of breaths. And, you know, this is something I learned from Howard Benson. He's the best at vocals. And, you know, his opinion on breaths is there's times and places to use them when it adds to the emotion. But most of the time, it sounds like a mistake because as a listener, you're not listening for the breaths. You're not focused on that. You're focused on what's singing, but who's singing. And if you have a breath come in super loud and then it hits some long delay, you're like, and that's just going through your whole mix when you're trying to like make it work. It can be very counterproductive. And like when Paul DeCarli edits, and this is something everyone needs to know, please don't put breaths on the doubles, on the background vocals, nothing. If you have breaths, only put them on the lead vocal. Like when you have a background vocal, like what's down here, like a harmony, you don't want breaths on these background vocals. And I can't tell you how many sessions I get, more than not. There are breaths, like this whole section right here would be breath, breath, and then 2 breaths, because this is a double, 2 sides. And so you have 4 breaths happening at once. And so one of the first things I do when I get a session from somebody is I clean all the vocals up like this. I go through and I find the breaths, I clip gain them down, chop them out. I don't even know if people notice this when they get the mix back. They'll have a chorus full of breaths on every track, and then they'll get it back and there's not one breath. And I don't know if I've never had anyone say anything like, where are the breaths? What happened? And it just sounds cleaner and bigger and better. You know, and yeah, if you're going to have breaths, try to just keep it on one track. You don't need it on the other tracks. It's really easy just to chop it out. I mean, if I'm editing vocals, if I'm using Melodyne or something, I'll typically go through and chop out all the breaths on like a double before I even run it through Melodyne to start tuning it. I'll clean it up and fade it and make it nice and easy so I don't have to worry about it. And you don't forget or mess up or something. And so, yeah, definitely encourage everyone to think about that because that makes a massive difference with your vocals. And then you can also compress it a whole lot more. And you're not like, man, that it's making the breaths come out way too much if I compress it this much. Well, get rid of them or turn them down, you know. So let's check out kind of the chain from here.
Oh, meet your maker, say something that makes sense.
So that's with Howard Benson vocals. And showing you the double, because I added this double lock. I turn the compression down on the double. So the lead is all the way up, and this double is down almost halfway. Same EQ, limiter, and bringing the compression down changed the tone of that. And it kind of gives them their own tone. And when they hit this chain up here, it all works better together, in my opinion. So using this 1081, I like this a lot. It's just a cool little thing to add. I don't add a lot of EQ with this, but I'm adding like the smallest bit of like 3.3, smallest bit of 220 to give it like a little bit more. And that's about it. And then the plugin itself gives it some tone.
Oh, meet your maker, say something that makes sense. These are your last words, so make them worth the wait.
So here's kind of the settings I did for this. This is something that's fun to mess with on the air band. I'll use the 10K or the 20K air band and add some of that on vocals. It's a nice little trick to give it a little bit more at the top end, especially when you are going to, you are de-essing at the front. Maybe add a little bit of this. Added just a notch of 2.5. It just made it cut a little bit more. Got rid of, this is what's great with this too. You get rid of some 650, a little bit in the sub area. And yeah, it sounds great to me.
Oh, meet your maker, say something that makes sense. These are your last words, so make them worth the wait.
You can just see, like, it's just so much more aggressive to me. It cuts way more. And when you hear it in the mix here in a sec, it makes a big difference. And I'll make everything inactive and go through it with the mix playing so you can kind of hear what it does. From there, Joel, Fatso.
Yes.
Number one favorite plugin for vocals. If I just had an SSL E channel in this, I'd be happy. This is like the best. Oh, and Howard Benson vocals, of course. But usually do a lot of compression with this, and you can kind of see what it's doing here.
Oh, meet your maker, say something that makes sense. These are your last words, so make them worth the wait.
It really kind of ties it all together. Obviously, it's a lot of gain reduction. To me, yeah, it really brings it together, makes it aggressive, makes it feel, like it helps it just really sit in the mix a lot more than without it. And you don't have to use this. You could use, there's a number of compressors out there. There's like R channel or different things that'll just smack it like this, like, really compressed. But that's a good trick to do, putting all the vocals together, especially when you have a double. Now, something that's not as aggressive of a song, you're not going to want to do that. But for something like this is a really, really good trick. And the last thing, doing a little bit of de-essing. Again, Pro MB, the Fab Filter one, you could do it with that, but just using this.
Something that makes sense. These are your last words, so make them worth the wait.
Getting all those T's and whatever, just kind of cleaning it up a little bit. And then this all goes to the effects. Here's this RC24 soft tube.
Oh, meet your maker, say something that makes sense. These are your last words, so make them worth the wait.
There you go. Just giving it some nice sound, a little bit of life. After that is this H delay. 8th note, ping pong, lo-fi.
Oh, meet your maker, say something that makes sense. These are your last words, so make them worth the wait.
I had a throw delay at the very end with this Imperial delay plugin. So it's a half note. Sometimes, it depends on the tempo, but that's what worked. Wanted something kind of long, and this plugin's fun because it'll make it really wide and in sync delay, and it's not ping-ponging or anything. So it's a cool sound. Good little trick, and I'll show you kind of what it does right here.
Or it's too late.
That's kind of what I use that for. And then the last thing, that Valhalla verb.
Oh, meet your maker, say something that makes sense. These are your last words, so make them worth the wait.
I like using a couple reverbs on the vocals, a delay or two. Why not? It's kind of fun for stuff like this. Give it a lot of life. And that sort of vocal chain, similar to all the other vocals, I'll kind of walk you through it, but I was going to play you guys what this all sounds like now together. And so you can hear the difference with it on and off.
Oh, meet your maker, say something that makes sense. These are your last words, so make them worth the wait. Meet your maker, it's time to set things straight. These are your last words, so make them count, or it's too late. Oh, meet your maker, say something that makes sense. These are your last words, so make them worth the wait. Meet your maker, it's time to set things straight.
Obviously makes a pretty big difference, I feel like, with it sounding together and not together, I guess, And I mean, I love Anders' voice and how he sang this. It's so aggressive, It's really fun to mix something like this, man.